Hi guys, Dan here. Today we have a look at the XB1 Handbrake from Simlab. I think with the new WRC rally game from EA coming out very soon, a lot of people will probably look for a handbrake, and I think this is a very nice option in terms of price performance, and in this review I'll tell you why. Oh, by the way, if you didn't know, I also have a version of this review in German available on my second channel, link in the description below. First of all, the handbrake was provided by Simlab for this review, but all the opinions are my own, and Simlab does not have any impact on this review. Very quickly, technical specs. We have a 150 kilogram load cell that is actually in line on this Elastamere stack. We do have a full aluminum body, then a micro USB port in the back. Why? And the price is slightly below 200 euros including taxes. And to be honest, I think for that money you don't get any better handbrake on the market right now. First of all, we'll start with build quality. It's really nice. I have to say, when I first saw the renders of the handbrake and the new Simlab pedals, I was like, that kind of looks a little bit toyish or cheap. But that's only because it were renders, and in person the handbrake actually looks really, really nice. Very good build. I mean, there's nothing really bad here. The only sharp edges are a little bit on this pin here, but that's not a big problem. The handbrake also is very light. The grip feels good and grippy in your hands. You can, in theory, exchange this if you want to. This does come off, and it's, I don't know what thread it is, but you can put on another knob. But this one actually feels good. There's a little bit of left-right play on the arm, but that's nothing you really notice when you're actually driving. I mean, if you're sitting there in your rig and you try to look for any weaknesses, you can notice that, but again, it's totally not noticeable when you're actually driving. Mounting is very straightforward. You have a mounting hole in the back, just a regular hole, and then an elongated hole in the front. So you can mount this at a slight angle if you want to. And considering that you typically have it to the right of your sequential shifter, you might want to angle it a little bit. If you want even more angle, there's an additional mounting bracket from Simlab for 29 euros, I think. That lets you mount it further away from your mounting point and also angled even more. One downside compared to other handbrakes I've reviewed, it only can be mounted like this. Some other handbrakes let you also mount the handbrake like this, and then you can mount the handle still facing to the top, but this is not possible on this design. I don't really think that's a big problem, but if you, for whatever reason, need to mount it like this, well, it's not possible. And in general, this works exactly like a load cell brake pedal. It's not measuring the travel, but the actual force that you put onto the load cell in this yellow ring here. I don't think it is super crucial for a handbrake to be load operated and not travel operated, but it also doesn't hurt, and since they have the design for their pedals, I think it totally makes sense to use in a handbrake, and most handbrakes that I've tested are actually measuring the load and not the travel. I think it's only the Moza one that was travel-based. This is a nice advantage though if you use the handbrake as your regular brake. For example, if you cannot use a regular pedal brake with your feet. Because in the end, this is still muscle memory measuring the force, and if you want to use it as a regular brake, this can be a big advantage. So like I said, the load cell is actually directly mounted in this Elastamere stack. Let me take this apart and show you. I think for the handbrake, nice, but it's probably really nice for the pedals because it does not get more linear than this with the measurement. So to remove this, you can either remove this pin here on the front, or you remove all the preload, and then you can take it out in the back here. Just gotta compress it a bit and then it slips up. Then we take this out. We can see the actual load cell. As you can see, the middle part here is the one that deflects slightly, and then it measures the deflection and gives you that value as an electrical signal that gets amplified in the electronics, and then you have your output signal. And I'm really, really curious to test the pedals because there are not a lot of pedals that actually measure the load directly in this Elastamere stack. I think only the Wave Italy pedals are doing it like that. It should be fine, like with most other pedals that mount the load cell at an angle or something. But this is the most linear way to actually do this. And yeah, very curious to actually test the Simlab pedals. But let's put this back together here. We do have a dual stage design here. We have one spring and the Elastamere for compression. Then you can adjust the preload using these two nuts. So tighten it with the first one and then counter it with the second one so it doesn't lose the preload. And with that, you can basically set the initial strength of the actuation. And as you can see here, the first part with the spring is really, really light. I do have the spring stopper mounted right now. I'll show you the options in a second. But you can reduce the travel of the spring either by adding more preload or by adding the spacer. You can also remove the spring completely if you want to. But I opted with a relatively soft Elastamere spring stopper and a little bit of travel on the spring as my preference. It does come with 3 elastomeres in the box, a 70, 60, 50 and 40A. I've currently mounted the softest one, but I think I actually prefer the 50A, so I'll show you how to exchange that. First of all, either remove this pin here or remove all the preload and then take it out in the back. I'll remove the pin for now because we haven't done that yet. So push this to the top, then you can remove it, and then you have this whole thing available. And you need to be a little bit careful because the load cell is mounted to the electronics with a cable here, so don't squish the cable, don't put too much excessive force on it, and just make sure you put it back together in the right order as well. But to remove the elastomere, we'll just take the pin here out. You can see right now we have the 40A, but I think we will go with the 50A. Put it in. Oh, by the way, also the spring compression stopper looks like this. So if you want to have more travel with the spring, remove it. It comes with it not installed, so I added it because I prefer it like this. You can also remove the spring altogether and just use this if you don't like the spring, but for me, spring plus spring travel stopper has been the best combo. So let's put this back together. Install it here and add the pin back, lock it in place, and we are done. Now we can adjust the preload to our preference, lock the preload into place, and here we go. So you can see this part here, this initial one that is very light to engage, is the spring part, and now you just compress the elastomere. I wish Simlab would maybe also include a spring for the whole stack so that you don't have to mix a relatively weak spring with an elastomere, but maybe have a more linear feeling handbrake with just one bigger, stronger spring. I think that would be my preference, but this obviously depends. I think this is probably feeling more realistic because the first phase actually simulates till the handbrake elements go to the part they break. I don't know how to explain that properly, but it's more realistic to how a handbrake in a real car feels, but I still kind of prefer a more linear feel on it. Electronics inside, they look good. I don't want to go too much into detail. They use a PIC18 microcontroller with an HX711 load cell ADC. Nothing to criticize here. It works very well and has plenty of resolution. And then it's not a big deal, but using a micro USB port in 2023 just doesn't feel appropriate. I mean, it works, but still feels a little bit out of place here on this otherwise very modern and very nice product. You do not have to use any software with this, but if you want to modify it a little bit, there's the Race Director software. Let me quickly plug in the handbrake with this cable from 1812, and then I'll show you the options. Once you plug it in, you need to go to the settings and actually enable it. It does not recognize it automatically, at least not on this version. So check XB1 load cell handbrake, click here, and then you see the output. You can do the dead zone setting, 5% per default, works very well for me. You can also do the calibration here. I mean, for me, this is fine now. And if you want to, you can also go to like exponential or logarithmic curves here. For me, the linear one seemed fine. You can also do custom curves in a weird fashion if you want to do that. But yeah, there's the software. It feels a little bit dated, but it does everything that you need the software to do. So I think that's fine. I've had 0 issues with the software. And yeah, let's talk a little bit about the competition. Moser handbrake, for example, is around 100 euros. It does not measure the load, it measures the travel. It still feels nice. This one is definitely nicer, but also costs twice the money. If you want to go even fancier, then I think options to look at would be the Heusinkwelt handbrake. It is a similar concept, also has a spring and an elastomere. I think it feels slightly more solid, but it's also much more expensive. I think it's around 330 euros or so. If I had to choose between the Simlab XB1 and the Heusinkwelt, I would pick the Simlab because It just has the better price-performance ratio. I think this might be a tiny bit nicer, but not 130 euros nicer, definitely not. This has the advantage that you can also mount it like this and mount the handbrake handle so that it still points to the top. But if I had to choose between those two, I would pick the Simlab one. And I think my favorite handbrake right now is the SRP one, but it's also significantly more expensive. I think it's even more expensive than the Heusinkveld one at 340 euros or so. It does not have this dual stage thing. It's a more linear filling handbrake using pneumatic technology, but again, 340 euros. Less than 200, I think this is the clear price performance winner. All right, to wrap this up, 3 things that I like about the handbrake: build quality and looks. It looks so much better than the renders we saw. Then price performance ratio is absolutely unmatched. I think if you're looking for a handbrake, this is probably the one to get, unless you want to spend really significantly more money. And even then, you do get a maybe slightly nicer handbrake, but I think the upcharge is in no relation to the performance increase of those. And then I really like the inline pressure reading of this. Probably not as useful on the handbrake as on the pedals, but it's still very nice to have here. Well, 3 things I dislike. First, USB connector, micro USB. We talked about that. Then the mounting options. While I don't think it's a big issue, it is limited compared to the competition. And well, to be honest, I can't think of a third thing. So let's just say it's not good that this is not purple. So overall, very good handbrake. If you want to get a handbrake with a load cell without breaking the bank, this is the one to get. Absolutely. I don't really have anything bad to say about it, and I can absolutely recommend it. If you like the review, maybe give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. And also let me know if you would be interested in a review of the push-pull shifter as well, because I think this is a nice match to it. Very high quality as well, spoiler. But yeah, that's it. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.